So let's talk about some Chaos Codex rules rumours that have been circulating on the internet. Chaos Doctrines, Legion traits and icons of Chaos, and a few other tasty hints. Hello and welcome back to Warspec Tactics, where today we're talking about a few leaks or rumours for the Chaos Space Marine Codex, ones that I was a little bit sceptical about covering on the channel, but I've had a fair few people ask me if we can talk about them, so I thought that we'd at least cover the rumours in brief. In terms of what we know about the Chaos Codex, it really does seem that all the rumours are pointing that it is on its way and fairly soon. We know that there's going to be a Warpsmith and Chosen coming out in that Eldritch Omens box, and as Chaos are now one of the few remaining factions not to be getting a Codex in 9th edition yet, it seems very likely that it'll be on its way in the next few months. I'd be kind of amazed if we don't get it by June, and it might be significantly sooner than that. That major 40k leaks release schedule has talked about a major Chaos model refresh as well. That leak has so far been right about absolutely everything so far, and it was really quite specific about the Chaos model range. They've already correctly called a Chosen and Warpsmith revamp. The other things that it mentioned were Human Cultist, Mutant, Renegade Guard, and a Cultist HQ choice of some sort, plus another couple of updated core Chaos kits in the Possessed and the Bikes. Maybe not quite as massive an update as the Eldar are getting, but still not really all that far behind. So far the internet's been fairly quiet as to any sort of leaked rules for the Codex, at least compared with the ones from the Eldar decks, which seem to be getting absolutely everywhere all over the place. But recently someone has posted a bunch of rumours that have been really quite widely circulated. I think they might have first appeared on the Bolter and Chainsword and 4chan, but since then have been covered by really quite a lot of the other 40k news and rumours sites. For me, I do feel that these are maybe a level below in evidence quality compared with some of the other things that we've seen. They purely seem to be text-based rules rumours, but they do seem pretty believable and plausible. My instincts say that the Super Doctrine system sounds very believable indeed, but to be honest I think at this stage I really wouldn't be getting too stressed either way by these. Perhaps an interesting hint of what's to come, but also these do have the potential to be completely fabricated, albeit by someone who writes pretty plausible rules and seems to have a good grasp of what Games Workshop would do. Still though, I've certainly found them interesting to read over, so let's take a look. For rumoured rules we've got a Super Doctrine system, Chaos icons and Legion traits, and then a few other hints about the general contents of the Codex. First up, and perhaps one of the most interesting things, is this rumoured Chaos Doctrine system. This one in particular does seem very believable indeed. Chaos Space Marines, like every other faction in 9th edition, will certainly be getting some sort of pure army bonus, something that they get if they don't bring any allied demons or Chaos Knights along. A Super Doctrine system certainly makes sense, as it's kind of a dark mirror of the Loyalists version. They of course get extra AP for heavy weapons in the Devastator Doctrine, and move forward to the Tactical and Assault. According to these rumours, the Chaos will be getting something very similar, but rather than getting extra AP for each weapons, they would instead get exploding 6s to hit. Apparently the 3 doctrines are called Destruction, Massacre and Slaughter. Of course Devastator, Tactical and Assault are nowhere near heretical enough for Chaos Marines, and in general in terms of a damage buff, exploding 6s to hit usually equate to around about a 25% boost in damage output, at least on all the models that are hitting on a 3+. To me this seems like it would roughly balance out with the Space Marine version. For Space Marines the extra AP is quite a big deal on things like bolters, particularly when you're firing against high AP foes, but it really doesn't make all that much difference on big high AP weapons, things like las cannons, melter guns, power swords or fists. The Chaos bonus would generally be better on those things, and the standard Space Marine ones more on low AP attacks. It sounds like the Chaos might also get a Super Doctrine per Legion as well. Again, that certainly has the potential to be good fun, and I can't help but think that as this is an exploding 6s mechanic, it would very likely replace the current version of Death to the False Emperor, which of course is currently exploding 6s in melee all the time. If this one does turn out to be the case, I think that will be a welcome boost to the faction, alongside I'm sure all sorts of other buffs in the Chaos Codex, which I'm sure will contain all sorts of other good stuff, including Space Marines getting their extra wounds, and a nice revamp of their Legion traits and other abilities. Next up we've got some rumoured changes for their Chaos icons. The Unaligned Vengeance one gives you +1 combat attrition, Wrath the Khorne one gives you extra AP in melee, Flame the Tzeentch one gives you -1 AP in shooting, Excess the Slaanesh one gives you +1 to hit in melee, and Despair the Nurgle one allows 6s to hit in melee to auto wound the target. Whether or not these are actually good is kind of quite points dependent to be honest, but provided you've got a fair amount of bodies in the unit it does seem pretty believable that they'll be strong. Better AP in shooting certainly seems quite nice for something like Terminators with all those combi bolters. +1 to hit in melee is rarely a bad thing for Chaos, and the 6s to hit auto wounding thing could be pretty good for anything with a large volume of low strength attacks. Largely, I feel that these are going to be an improvement on the current ones. Aside from Vengeance, which does seem a little bit weedy unless it's completely free, all of these do give you meaningful buffs to the unit, depending on your god alignment. Next up, in a change that Chaos really have been waiting for since their first edition of their Codex all the way at the start of 8th edition, it does look like their Legion traits are finally getting revamped. A lot of these were kind of lackluster when they first came out, back when Games Workshop didn't really quite understand how 8th edition was working yet, and have lagged far behind the other choices for different factions. According to this rumour, each Legion will be well represented within the book, getting 6 Warlord traits, 8 relics and 8 stratagems. And I was wondering whether they'd actually update all the Legion supporting rules like the Warlord traits, relics and stratagems. They first came out in the Psychic Awakening supplement, but were reprinted this edition in the Warzone Charadon book, which made me wonder whether or not that's still going to stand after the new Chaos Codex comes out. In my opinion, I think it would be best just to consolidate them in and revamp things. Anything that they can do to stop you having to buy extra supplements would be a good thing. So hopefully this will be as they've rumoured. There's a few teasers here for Night Lords, Iron Warriors, Word Bearers and Black Legion. Night Lords certainly seem monstrously improved. They now have a -2 leadership and -1 combat attrition all the way out to 9 inches, a bit more meaningful than before, and also appear to have taken the leaf from the Blood Angels book with a +1 to advance and charge as well. I think that would really help them out. Certainly would be a big boost to having their Raptors and Warp Talons jump out of the shadows to claw you to death. Much like the standard Space Marines, according to this they will be getting Super Doctrines as well. The Night Legion one apparently giving you +1 to wound with pistol, assault or melee weapons against anyone whose leadership 6 or lower. I think that really could be quite good fun. It actually makes their leadership debuff mechanic that bit more meaningful, as you can actually translate lower leadership into some genuine damage boost. Not all that many things in the game are leadership 9 or above, aside from specific factions. It seems that if you could maybe put some Night Lord Raptors within close range of a unit, then you could well be getting +1 to wound on them just at base, and that would be pretty terrifying. Otherwise, apparently they have a Warlord trait to cancel OBSEC, a stratagem for some jump pack units to deep strike turn 1, something that in general Games Workshop tried to cut out of the game, but now seems to be creeping back in a few of the more recent codexes. Both Genestealer Cult and Tau have ways to get reserves in on turn 1, and apparently Vox Scream's ability to cancel auras will still remain. If all of those things do come to pass, it's certainly a big boost to the Night Lords, perhaps arguably one of the least competitive Chaos Legions right now. For the Iron Warriors, apparently their Ignores Cover bonus will be supplemented by a +1 save against AP -1 or 2 weapons. I actually quite like that combo, to be honest, a decent shooting buff with a pretty reasonable defensive boost, even if it doesn't apply to literally every attack that comes at you. Their Super Doctrine is probably a devastator one, and it gives you +1 to wound with heavy weapons against vehicles, buildings or units in cover. I feel like that's exactly the sort of things that the Imperial Fists need, to be honest. Their Super Doctrine's been in a bit of an unfortunate place since Games Workshop nerfed it. Next up are some rumoured rules for the Word Bearers, though I must admit these traits do seem a little bit more in keeping with World Eaters than Word Bearers, though according to a later leak they might not even be in the book at all. In any case, whichever ones these are, apparently they'd get reroll hits on the charge and a 5+ save against mortal wounds, and their Wanton Slaughter Super Doctrine would cause 6s to wound, causing 1 mortal wound to a maximum of 3 per unit per fight. I'm definitely not saying that that couldn't represent Word Bearers. I guess the 5+ save against mortal wounds could represent their Dark Faith, but also it does seem pretty perfect for World Eaters as well. Massive damage when they charge in, plus even more for a few mortal wounds too, and a bit of a scorn of sorcery going on. Kind of interesting how just from the rules it could seem to apply to multiple legions, even though they're really quite different in character. Finally, potentially good news for the Black Legion as well. Their buff has gone to Ignores Combat Attrition and a +1 to hit on the charge, or when shooting at the closest enemy unit. That's a massive buff to their Legion trait, to be honest. Before it was a bit crap. A very specific boost to rapid fire weapons and a bit of leadership really just doesn't apply to all that much. Their Super Doctrine also would seem to make sense as well. It looks like it's a massacre one, so the equivalent of the Space Marine tactical one, and rather than getting exploding 6s to hit on that doctrine, they get exploding 5s instead. So every 5 or 6 to hit with rapid fire assault or pistol weapons, causing an extra hit on both 5s and 6s. Seems pretty dangerous to me. There's also a few more things as well, though I must admit the rumour text is a little bit garbled, and it does say that these might be partly from a different source. Maybe a few of these claims are a little bit more out there or seem a touch more unlikely. Again, I totally wouldn't be surprised if at least some of it's true, but I have a hard time believing other bits of it. Perhaps one of the more unlikely things is that apparently Mutilators and Greater Possessed both wouldn't be in the core codex. Both of those just seem like they'd be quite strange options just to remove straight up. I know Mutilators are an old kit that they probably can't be bothered to revamp as they're not really a priority. but it would still seem like an odd move to me to just remove them altogether. Games Workshop don't generally tend to do that, even if they're not in a hurry to replace the models. The same for Greater Possessed as well. They're really quite recent sculpts, and there's no way that the models wouldn't be available anymore. So again, it seems very, very unlikely that they'd just be straight up removed. Makes me a bit less likely to trust a few of the other rumours on this bit. I suppose if they were removed, perhaps the only real good reasons for actually removing them would be a revamped Possessed kit, maybe just releasing it so all the Possessed are a massive great big tough unit, much like the Greater Possessed, and Greater Possessed might just count as regular Possessed now. The rumour did also mention that Standard Possessed will be going to 3 wounds, Strength and Toughness 5. I guess that's plausible if they do have new models on the way, though it would seem a bit strange that they'd released the standard profile in both the Death Guard and Thousand Suns books, and then suddenly update it for Chaos Space Marines. I guess if they did, they could always errata the other books though if they felt like it. This source also had a few things to say about other factions in the Codex. Apparently Red Corsairs, Creations of Bile, and Emperor's Children are all included. Certainly would be nice to have as much support for the other sub-factions as possible, and not save Creations of Bile or Red Corsairs, or the other various war bands to be released in a supplement. Though if Emperor's Children are included, it would likely mean no standalone Codex release for some time. It seems almost inevitable that they will get a standalone book at one point or another. According to the same source though, and quite interestingly, apparently they claim that World Eaters are not in the Codex, and if they truly weren't, it would really mean only one thing, that Games Workshop would have a World Eaters Codex in the works, and would be out at least in the relatively near future. As I mentioned, that really wouldn't be the biggest surprise. They've released massive demon Primarchs of Magnus and Mortarion over the years. They are some of Games Workshop's more impressive and best-selling models. At some point Angron and Fulgrim are going to follow them, it's only a question of when. I'm sure World Eaters players would be absolutely overjoyed by that news, and the coming of some new plastic Khorne Berserkers no doubt. At the moment though, I'd still very much treat this as a complete rumour, but it will be very telling to see which factions are and aren't supported in the new Chaos Codex. It could be a very clear indication as of what's to come. Finally, in another expected change, they also say that basically everyone gets +1 attack to account for Hateful Assault being rolled in. I strongly suspect that that might happen with Space Marine Shock Assault as well, whenever their next codex comes out. I must admit the mechanic is just a tiny bit fiddly. It tends to apply in the vast majority of combats, but just for the sake of rule simplicity, it might just make sense to have it on their base profile and not be fiddling with an extra special rule. In any case, I'd certainly treat these all as rumours, make of them what you will. I think that the Doctrine system sounds very plausible, and I think that that will be well received, and those Legion traits do look very exciting, and fairly believable based on some of their abilities and things like stratagems in their previous incarnation. Certainly will be good news for Chaos Marine players if they do come out like this. Definitely a faction that needs a big boost, and I've got no doubt that their 9th edition decks will go some way to doing that. Let me know what you think anyway, down in the comments below. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more like this. I'll certainly try and keep any news of Games Workshop's news and releases coming. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention one way in which you can help support Auspex Tactics, and that's my Element Games affiliate link down in the video description. Element Games is a UK-based discount retailer. They usually give 10 to 20% off Games Workshop's miniatures, so they can be a decent way to save a bit of money. If you click on the link before buying anything, a small amount goes to help support Auspex Tactics. It doesn't cost you any more, and it can just be a way to help the channel out if you were thinking about ordering in some models anyway. For people over in the USA, I do also have an Amazon link down there as well. Again, that works in much the same way. Click the link, literally buy anything from it, and a small amount goes to help support the channel without costing you any more. Again, just one potential way to help out if you were picking up something anyway. In any case, an enormous thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.